Hello friends, Casey here, and today I'm here to give you a video that has been requested and awaited by quite many of you. Well, of course you can tell it from the title, Majora's Mask version differences. And we have a lot to go through, so let's get this started. Like Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask is playable on many consoles, namely Nintendo 64, Gamecube, Wii U, and 3DS. And like Ocarina of Time, there are heaps of differences within one console. Unlike with the previous video, first I'm going to go through the differences between the regular Majora's Mask and then compare all that to Majora's Mask 3D. First, we obviously have Nintendo 64, and unlike Ocarina of Time where Japan and US share the same builds, Majora's Mask has completely different ones. Japan 1.0 is the very first build, and shortly after 1.1 followed with some minor changes like bug fixes. In 1.0, when playing the Song of Double Time in Clocktown, the Clocktown music would continue playing at night. Pirate's Fortress had no music during the night, except for the enemy battle music in the Zora Egg rooms, but in 1.1 these were fixed. The Deku Palace maze camera angles were changed, Kotake Potion glitch was fixed, which was achieved by filling the 6 bottle slots with the Madame Arma glitch, where the game wouldn't flag you getting the bottle from her, so it was possible to get a bottle from her every time loop. And then if you go to get the red potion from Kotake for the very first time, and having all 6 bottles, the red potion gets turned into the long shot from Ocarina of Time. Other changes made were the mispositioned Georg's Remains being fixed, and one really peculiar change was made to the Goth boss fight. In Japan 1.0 and all the other future versions, Goth runs over Link at the beginning of the fight, but in 1.1 it doesn't. Why this change was made is unclear, and why it was changed again in the future versions is even more unclear. And now to US 1.0, which is an upgrade from Japan 1.1. And the first thing to notice is of course the language and the name of the game. The name of Majora's Mask in Japan is the Mask of Majora, or Majora's Mask. Apparently the name Majora came from the game's art director's name Takaya Imamura, combined with the movie title Jumanji. Other noticeable changes are the names of the days. In the Japanese versions, the 3 days are called first, next, and the last day, which was also visible on the clock, but were a change in US 1.0 to first, second, and final. The only one to remain unchanged was the new day. The clock was also changed to show 12 when it was 12 AM or PM, as it previously showed 0 due to Japan using 24-hour clock system. For some reason, a bunch of sound effects are missing in this build. For example, some of Happy Meal's Salesman's Laugh, the mailbox Kaching, and Deku Princess's random vocalizations. And while they are missing, new ones were added. To name a few, Deku King vocalizing during Sonata of Awakening cutscene, Bomber's footsteps, Deku Card walking rustle sound, and Deku Link splashing when falling into the water. Other sound changes include the Skullkid's famous scream, which stays the same during the cutscene, but in Japanese versions, it decreases when the camera points at the moon. Let's have a listen, shall we? More sound changes include the shop music intro being cut when entering the shop, Zora Link no longer uses Goro Link's voice when grabbing a ledge or playing Song of Double Time, music no longer restarts when entering an area with the same soundtrack, for example going to Milk Road from Termina Field, Stone Tower is no longer silent during the night, even though when it was silent, and if the Song of Soaring is used in the temple and then warping to the entrance, the music would have resumed. Also, mooing was added when a cow grotto is near.
I actually never knew that was a thing. I always thought it was just some random ambient sound. What the heck?
Some character changes include Link facing the way he was facing when putting on a transformation mask instead of looking to the camera. C buttons being dimmed as Deku Link, Goron Link is more visible when obtaining an item, Zora Link is no longer locked into swimming the direction he is facing for the first seconds, instead he will face whatever direction the control stick is held at first. Also, when releasing A when swimming, Zora Link doesn't stop immediately, and he no longer jumps out of water when releasing A near shoreline, preventing the flying Zora glitch. The magic barrier can now also be used when hovering in water, not only when swimming, and also when using the barrier while being attacked by an eel, Link no longer falls awkwardly. Zora Link also now burns when falling into the poison water outside Woodfall Temple. Before using boomerangs, Zora Link doesn't take a step forward anymore, and Mikau can now be grabbed. Tatul gives more obvious hints in this version as well. Kotake now comes down after Z-targeting her, and you only need to talk to her once to receive the red potion instead of 2. The Scarecrow now hints about the songs of Inverted and Double Time, making them more obvious, as previously he would tell about them only after teaching him a song. Skull Kid's face has been changed from the one in Ocarina of Time to a more wooden texture. Totoo is now present at the milk bar at 10 PM, as previously there was a bug where he wouldn't appear when entering a milk bar at 10 PM. Gibdos burned by fire arrows no longer attack Link when wearing the Gibdo mask, Cafe runs faster after leaving from Sakon's hideout, the alien cutscene cows no longer have nose rings, and the cutscene of meeting Epona and Romani Ranch has also been changed. In the Japanese version, it starts in a bird's-eye view above the ranch and flies down to Epona, but in the US version, it follows Link in a first-person view running towards Epona. And now to some item and location changes. The Postman heart piece has been made a lot easier with removing the millisecond counter. The breakable barrels in Oceanside Spider House have been replaced with bots due to the possible glitch of a floating skull Tula. Madame Arma Battle glitch has been fixed. Using any C button items at Honey and Darling game during final day as Deku Link is no longer possible, and the bomb chews have been limited to 5 due to possible lag and crashing. The town shooting gallery has 15 seconds more time, and it is no longer possible to enter the scenery of the swamp shooting gallery as Goron Link. The bean cellar route has been changed by removing grottos that only have enemies in them. The marine researcher pyre has been lowered so that it is possible to climb on it, as before it was only accessible when jumping to it as Zora Link. The Pirate's Fortress no longer has a shortcut from the room where you shoot the beehive to the throne room, and the hookshot chest has been swapped to face the door. It is no longer possible to burrow into the dirt road of Romani Ranch as Deku Link, which might have been a leftover plan for how to defeat the aliens. The movable blocks on top of Stone Tower are no longer in a V shape but in a row. Block switches were also added outside of the entrance of the temple. Other miscellaneous changes include the power crouch stab no longer working, the inverted Song of Time no longer causes areas to become darker at night. When playing a song and the message "Your notes echoed far" appears, you can no longer walk around. And same with regaining control of Link before closing the text box during Sakon stealing the bomb bag being no longer possible, so leaving the clock town as Deku Link is no longer possible. And automatically closing text boxes now have to be closed by pressing A. Lastly, the biggest change is the saving system. Previously it was only possible to save the game by playing the Song of Time and going back in time, but US 1.0 added the possibility to save at the old statues. But these worked as kind of a quick save, as saving at the old statue would take you back to the title screen. And if you shut the game without ending at the old statue, it would start at the beginning of the current time loop, meaning that you could lose a lot of progress in that. I learned this the hard way. So I was just goofing around the Termina field and came along that stealing bitch Takuri. And what do you know? That stupid chicken stole my bottle and just flew away with it. And of course the 12-year-old me panicked and turned the console off, cause I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And when I reloaded the game, I had started at the beginning of the first day. Luckily I didn't lose that much progress, but there was still stuff I had to do again, which was annoying. But the new save system is with a cost. The Japanese one had 3 save files, but US 1.0 had only 2. The save files in the Japanese version also had a save counter, so basically counting how many time loops you have lived through. The US 1.0 had a rupee, heart piece and mask counters. The credits were also slightly changed by not including the Ocarina of Time stuff. And now we move to the European version, EU 1.0, or the more commonly known term, PAL 1.0. It mostly had just minor changes like fixing some glitches, such as when saving at an old statue on Epona, and when reloading you are no longer on her, no longer allowing the usage of C button items while on Epona. And it is no longer possible to transfer Epona between files by saving in one file while on Epona and then loading another file. Opening the item menu as Cafe in Sakon's hideout is no longer possible, as previously you were able to replace a mask with another mask in the C buttons, causing Link to wear it, so it is no longer possible to transform to the fierce deity there. Also, a bug was fixed where the Ikana fairy fountain has the proper yellow color instead of the incorrect green one. Other changes in this version are text changes. The automatically closing text boxes are now back, and the error in the Great Fairy's names was fixed. In the US version, the Great Fairy in Snowhead would introduce herself as Great Fairy of Wisdom, and on later visits as the Great Fairy of Courage. And in turn, the Great Fairy in Great Bay did the same thing, except calling herself first Courage and later Wisdom. And then in the PAL 1.1, the only changes seem to have been some text changes in the French version, which seems kinda bizarre. And now that we are done with the Nintendo 64, we can move on to the Gamecube. Majora's Mask was released on Gamecube as part of the Zelda Collector's Edition, and if you want more information about that, I covered it on my Ocarina of Time Differences video, so make sure to check that out if you're interested. First things first, the game's resolution was made a lot better from the 64 release, going from 320 by 240 to 640 by 480. And the game itself was a lot clearer compared to the somewhat misty Nintendo 64. The interface was also changed similarly to Ocarina of Time to match the color buttons to the ones of the GameCube's controller. The new buttons of the GameCube controller have a similar function to Ocarina of Time. X, Y and Z can be used to use the C-stick items, and the D-pad disables the minimap. There also is a separate saving screen when saving. Due to the GameCube being more powerful, there is less lag on certain points, but not without a price. Majora's Mask was emulated really badly, which causes some really annoying issues, such as the game freezing, which in itself is not that bad, if it wasn't for the crappy saving system of the game. Like I mentioned earlier, it is possible to quick save at the old statues, but if you turn the game off without saving at an old statue or using the Song of Time, it takes you back to the last time you used the Song of Time. So you can probably guess where I'm going with this. You might lose many hours of work and progress due to the game freezing and then having to start it all over again. This actually happened to me once. I had just beaten the Stone Tower Temple, and I had so much trouble with it, so I actually had to watch a walkthrough guide while I was doing the dungeon. Just a side note, I was probably like 12 or something back then. So in total it took me some hours. I don't really remember how many, but it took a long time. And after all the struggle and making time and space go round and round and round, I managed to complete it. And instead of going back in time to make sure everything is saved, I decided to go get the last bottle from the graveyard during the final day since I hadn't done it yet. And what do you know? As the cutscene of the post-spawning starts, my game decided to freeze, flushing everything I have done straight down the toilet. I remember being quite disheartened when it happened, but after restarting and seeing that all of my progress was gone, I just turned it off and went to do something else and didn't play the game for a while, cause at that point, I was too tired to even be mad. I actually thought that my Gamecube was breaking down or something and was kinda scared, and it was only till I started doing my research for my Ocarina of Time Differences video that I found out that the problem is within the game itself. And apparently the freezing is avoidable by disabling the rumble feature. But how the hell was I supposed to know that? And to this day, I actually haven't completed the Stone Tower Temple. Which means that I haven't completed Majora's Mask. The reason being that sometime after the freezing incident, I found the Ben Drowned creepypasta. And I was pretty damn horrified by it. Which put me off even more of finishing the temple, since the Elegy of Emptiness statue is a major part of the temple. Of course, I'm not that terrified of it anymore. See, me and Ben are good pals now. But for some reason, I have just never gotten around to complete the temple. I have pretty much done everything else, so the temple is the only thing I have to do. And well, the secret shrine, cause you can get into it only with the light arrows, and you'll get those from the Stone Tower Temple. Then there's of course the shooting galleries, but I'm not that masochistic that I would actually make myself suffer with my terrible aim to complete those. So maybe one day I'll get to it. Maybe. But I have completed Majora's Mask 3D, so hopefully that counts as something. But anyway, let's get back into the video before we get sidetracked too much. That is what you're here for anyway, not my rambling. So even though the resolution is better, the frame rate is lower than the N64's 20 FPS, which seems to have been caused by the unusability of the N64 expansion pack. Other issues include graphical ones, when the blur effect used during cutscenes doesn't load properly or doesn't disappear when needed to. The game mentions having sound irregularities, whatever they mean, but none of these other issues are addressed. Also, interestingly enough, the Gamecube would have been powerful enough to include a third save file and the old statue saving in the Western releases, but for reasons unknown, it wasn't added. And now for some regional differences. The difference between N64 US 1.1 and Gamecube are text changes. Extraneous words were removed and missing words were added. Other text changes include color coding and formatting. The difference between PAL 1.1 and Gamecube was once again text changes, and French ones to be specific. And there was only one known one, Milk Bar's name being changed from Le Lactel to Le Cremeux. And now to the Japanese one, which is quite peculiar, as it is mostly a mishmash of all the versions across the world. It mostly features the audio and visual styles from the Japanese version, but adds many improvements from US and PAL versions. And I am going to list all of them right now. Credits to the cutting room floor for all of these. Bombers make sounds when running. Prologue music does not play in Song of Time flashback. Getting a fourth heart piece plays the sound effect as it is a smaller item. Nighttime sound effects do not continue into Mikau cutscene. Deku Link falls into the water with a splash noise. Dekus in Deku Palace throne room make noises in-game and in cutscene. Song of Double Time only reloads the area. Shop theme intro is cut. Going from an area to another area with the same soundtrack does not fade out and fade in. Clock down just moved forward. Upon a cutscene with different camera angles. Cow in Alien cutscene doesn't have a nose ring. Stone Tower upper blocks aligned to next to each other. Some cutscenes are shortened. Skullkid's face has a wooden texture instead of the dark texture. Deco Merchant makes noise when launching out of a flower. Cannot walk around when the You No Secret Far message appears. Putting on transformation mask will not face Link to the camera if the cutscene stops. Easier bean seller path in Deku Palace. Scarecrow asks if you want to know about the Song of Double Time or Inverted Time. 5 bomb tree limit in Honey and Darling's minigame. Mikau can now be grabbed. Zorling's swimming physics change. Marine Research Lab platform lowered. Hookshot shortcut removed. Easier Great Bay Temple wheel puzzle. Oceanside Spider House ceiling with pots instead of breakable barrels. Stone Tower Temple has 3 switches near entrance. Inverted Song of Time lighting bug fixed. Crouch stab glitch fixed. Any item with Deku-Link in Honey Darling's minigame fixed. Digging into the road of Romani Rancho's Deku-Link is no longer possible. Warp Theme's ending does not glitch up when played in a shop. Invisible wall to prevent exploration of Swamp Shooting Gallery as Goron. No falling awkwardly after being swallowed by an eel. Zora Link does not use Girl Link's voices when using Song of Double Time. Zora Link no longer burns when falling into the poison water in Woodfall. Don't tower missing music at night glitch fixed. Start button does not work when playing as Cafe. Any item on Epona glitch after all statues save not fixed as in the PAL version. And same goes with transferring Epona to another save file. And finally, Goth runs Link over.
Did you know?
Majora's Mask was planned to be released on the Chinese console IQ player, but the production was ultimately stopped due to it violating China's censorship laws. Now how could that be possible? And apparently a planned name for it was, when translated to English, The Legend of Zelda: The Magic Mask. Majora's Mask was also later released on the Wii and Wii U Virtual Console. Apparently they were almost identical in their features, and they both featured a similar freezing as in the Gamecube, possibly indicating for it to be a direct port from the Collector's Edition. But also the freezing seems to only have appeared in the PAL version. Some graphical changes were made, like the coloring of the stray fairies, and the screen was made a lot darker in the Wii U version, and on some occasions it actually is even slower than the N64 version. Also, the name of the milk bar was once again changed in the French version to Le Lacto. They just can't decide what to name it, can't they? This portion is being recorded after all the other audio has already been recorded. So far, the freshest version of Majora's Mask is of course on the Nintendo Switch. And as far as I know, the only changes are graphical, lighting and some text changes. It seems to have fixed many things that went wrong with Ocarina of Time on the Switch. The Switch version also gives a loophole around the crappy old statue saving, since Nintendo Switch Online has suspend points, so you can pretty much save anytime you want and reset whenever you need without having to worry about losing much progress. But the pricing is pretty ridiculous, so the accessibility to it might be quite tough. And now that we have gone through all that, it is time to move to Majora's Mask 3D. And like with everything else, there's a lot to go through. Like Ocarina of Time 3D, Majora's Mask 3D was developed by Grezzo with the help of the original staff, and like Ocarina of Time 3D, it was the first remake of Majora's Mask that was not emulated. The game's graphics were recreated, more polygons were added to places and characters, the music and sounds were remastered to fit the 3DS, and overall the whole game was enhanced. The game also runs on 30 FPS instead of the original game's 20 FPS, while the touchscreen runs on 60 FPS. The controls are also basically the same as in Ocarina of Time 3D. B is for the sword, A to talk, roll, etc, etc, X and Y to use items, circle button to move, L to target, R to use the shield, but the rest of the buttons are actually different. And this time Yabai did the research properly. The D-pad is for Tattle, when she has something to say, instead of being on the touchscreen like Navi in Ocarina of Time 3D. And the notification pops up on the top left corner of the top screen. The start and select buttons open up the Bomber's notebook. And since Majora's Mask 3D was released with support to the new 3DS, it is possible to move the camera around with the C-stick. It also means that Majora's Mask 3D supports the Circle Pad Pro for those who have a regular 3DS, unlike Ocarina of Time 3D since it was released before the Circle Pad Pro. And like with other 3DS titles, it supports the 3D mechanic. And like Ocarina of Time 3D, all graphical overlays have been moved to the touchscreen except for the A button icon, which is transparent, and the newly designed clock. The clock has been redesigned to a bar instead of the sun clock lookalike from the original game, and it actually displays the full 3-day cycle even to the minutes, instead of just the current 6 hours. And the days are represented with different colors to tell them apart. The clock also stays on the screen all the time and doesn't fade away when Link is moving around, and during the final hours the moon icon shows up and turns red as time starts to run out. And now to the touchscreen, since as it turns out as the game is played on 3DS, it utilizes the touchscreen. Shocking, I know. And once again, the layout is really similar to Ocarina of Time 3D, with some small changes. On the top you have your heart and magic bar, in the middle you have the minimap instead of it being on the top screen's bottom right corner, and you can actually zoom into it and scroll through floors, see enterable locations, chests and all statues. The same works in the dungeons, and you can actually see the locations of obtained stray fairies on the map. On the right you have your 4 item slots compared to the 3 on the original game, and unlike Ocarina of Time there is no sword icon there. 3 of the items are usable through X and Y buttons, and the other 2 through the touchscreen with slots 1 and 2. On the right side you have the pictograph box, which works similarly to the view icon, where you can access to the first person mode. But you can also take one color picture compared to the original game where the picture was more in a sepia type of coloring. What a deal! You can use the first person mode with the control pad or with motion controls by moving the 3DS. Same works with the bow, making aiming so much more easier. And it also works when the L button is held down while not targeting anything or anyone. Under the pictograph box icon is the rupee and key counters, but the gear menu is actually between them, instead of being on the bottom center with the other menu icons. But we will get to those soon. And under that you have your ocarina. Like in Ocarina of Time 3D, the ocarina is no longer an equipable item and can be used anytime without it taking an item slot. And different instrument icons appear when transformation masks are on. It can be played with L, R, X, Y and A buttons, and playing all the songs have been made a lot easier, since you can now find all the songs you have learned on the bottom right corner of the touchscreen while playing, and you can play your ocarina while looking up how to play the songs. The colors of Sonata of Awakening and Elegy of Emptiness have been swapped. The inverted Song of Time, Song of Double Time and Scarecrow's Song are also there, but you have to play them once before they appear on the menu. But the Scarecrow Song still needs to be relearned after every time skip. The inverted Song of Time has been changed to slow the time by 50% instead of 30%, and the Song of Double Time allows you to skip to a specific hour instead of the beginning of a night or a day, making side quests and everything else so much easier and faster. Also, the location of where you learn the Song of Soaring has been changed from Woodfall to the entrance of the Southern Swamp, right next to the old statue. Southern Swamp Old Statue has a different location on the map and is more accurate to its actual placement.
I always thought it was kinda weird how far away it was.
Previously, it was only possible to go through the old statues in the teleportation map in 2 directions by pressing left or right with a control stick, but now it is possible to go any direction you want. Next to the ocarina icon on the bottom center of the touchscreen is the mask, map and items menu. And once again they are separate menus, so it is possible to open them individually. The previously mentioned gear menu is really similar to the old one. Some things have just switched places and the songs have been removed from it altogether. The ocarina and the previously unused transformation mask instrument icons are there as well as the pictograph box and the wallet. The giant wallet can now be obtained on any day and not just during the first day. And as you can see, there is a brand new item on the menu, which is the fishing hole pass, which we get in more detail later. All the trade sequence items appear there as well instead of the item menu. The boss remains no longer glow and the replacements represents their locations. Goht in the top middle for Snowhead, Odolva in the bottom for Woodfall, Kjork on the left for Great Bay, and Twinmold on the right for Ikana. The boss remains have also been redesigned to match the boss's new designs. It is also possible to access options from the gear menu, where you can change the motion control, sound and other settings. The Bomber's notebook is now received from the Happy Mask salesman instead of Jim, the leader of the Bombers, and has been changed quite drastically. There are a lot more events and characters included in it, and it is a lot easier to keep track of everything, and it is even possible to set an alarm to a specific time. For example, when a certain event is going to start, and when it is time, Tattle reminds you about it. And it is no longer possible to access it through the gear menu, only through the start or select buttons. Also, when hovering over an item, it shows up on the top screen with its description, and the current time is also displayed there. And this is same for all the other menus. Now to the masks menu, where you can put the masks wherever you want and make an inventory of your own image. Some of the masks have been changed, and the most notable being the Garou mask, as it has been changed to look like the Garou Master instead of the basic Garou Ninja. The Circus Leader's mask has been renamed to Troop Leader's mask. The stone mask is now obtained in the Gerudo Fortress, as the injured soldier has been moved there instead of being in the Ikana Valley, making the fortress a bit more challenging. The method to obtain it is the same though. Due to the lack of the rumble feature and the shot of agony, the Mask of Truth is now used to discover hidden grottos. The ground starts glowing when near the grotto while wearing the mask. The Giant's Mask is obtained after the defeat of the Blue Twin Mold, instead of finding it in the temple. It is possible to equip a mask on top of a transformation mask without separately having to remove the transformation mask and then putting on another mask. When opening the map menu, a fully enhanced and animated map of Termina with location names and all statues is seen, instead of just a stinky copy of the old map being latched into the screen like in Ocarina of Time 3D. Zooming in with X shows even more specific locations and their names. And like I mentioned earlier, the bottom screen has the minimap, which you can zoom into, and it shows you floors, enterable houses and chests. The item menu is customizable just as the mask menu, and unlike Ocarina of Time 3D, the elemental arrows have their own slots instead of being in a separate menu, and they can be equipped more than one at a time.
But they don't make that funky sound anymore when equipped. Sad face.
Ice arrows have been changed to not being able to freeze water everywhere, but there are certain spots and enemies that sparkle, indicating they can be frozen. But in the Great Bay Temple boss room, it is possible to freeze the water everywhere. Also, the Graveyard, Poe Bottle and Corm's target shooting piece of heart have swapped places, and a 7th bottle has been added, and it can be obtained through a new side quest from Gorman after delivering him mystery milk from his brothers. And now to some character changes. Deku Link has a root on the top of his hat when performing the spin attack. As Deku Link spins, the cursor on the map also spins. And when he is shooting a bubble, it doesn't burst if charged for too long, and it has an outline showing up where it is somewhat going to land.
Which is not that precise, to be honest.
Also, when flying as Deku Link and pressing R, a mark shows up where he will land, similarly to Wind Waker HD
And regular Wind Waker with that single tuner.
Girl Link's attacks are a lot faster, and the curling is done by pressing A once instead of holding it down, and pressing A again uncurls him. Zora Link's swimming has been drastically changed, but goes back to his old swimming if the magic barrier is used by pressing R. Apparently his swimming was changed to make it more maneuverable. Zora Link's boomerangs also return to him immediately now when pressing B. Tatsuo has different colored sprites depending on what she wants to talk about. Blue when targeting an enemy, yellow when the alarm goes off and she reminds you of a happening event, red when she has something general information to say, and at the beginning of the game she no longer remembers where the Great Fairy is, but tells Link to ask the Bombers gang for clues. Epona can no longer run over Deku flowers, she also neighs a lot more when not mounted, making it easier to find her, and she gets a speed boost when pulling the circle pad doing 180 degrees turn. The Bombers are no longer required to be challenged for a second time, since the Happy Mask Salesman gives you the Bomber's Notebook. The Bombers' hiding spots are now different as well, and prior to the hide and seek, Jim forbids the use of Deku Nuts, but nothing happens if they are used. They also give rumors, which are added to the notebook, which then helps to discover new events and side quests. The Stray Fairies have 3D sprites now instead of being 2D. Skull Kid no longer jumps away from the clock tower after viewing him from the Astral Observatory. Andrew gives Link the rune key only as Goron Link. Homie now acknowledges killing the Octorok with the boat. The Deco Guards no longer show vision range during the night. The Great Fairies of Power and Wisdom have swapped places with their rewards, meaning that the larger magic meter is now obtained from Woodfall and the magic spin attack is obtained from Snowhead. Captain Kita now talks before the battle and is much lower than before. Cafe no longer gets hurt from explosives. Takuri no longer shows up on the map.
So hold your bottles tightly.
Redeads have new dances, and as you can see, the Sumlocks now have only one eye instead of a face. And all the bosses feature a new weak point as an eye, and the fights have been changed to make them more challenging. Odolva is now immune to some attacks, as he blocks them with his shield, so it is not possible to just swing your sword to defeat him. But instead, he is more vulnerable to attacks from above, as the previously mentioned eye is there. Goth is mostly the same as before. Only new thing is that when he's lying on the ground weakened, the giant eye appears and needs to be hit. So far the fight with Georg is the most changed since it has two distinct phases, the first being pretty similar to the one in the original Majora's Mask. But during the second phase, the whole platform goes underwater and you have to detach the floating mines for Georg to inhale while it is trying to suck Link up.
Oh boy, how much trouble I had with that.
Also, Georg's design is completely different, giving him a more detailed look. Like Georg, Twin Mold has two faces, one for each worm.
Get it? Two faces? One for each worm? No? Okay, anyway.
One worm flies in the air and you have to shoot the eyes in its belly with the light arrows. After it's defeated, you will receive the Giant's Mask and you have to punch your way through with the other worm and smash it to the ground to expose its weak point. So basically, the Fierce Deity's Mask is pretty much useless in the second phases of Georg and Twin Mold, as the abilities of the Zora Mask and the Giant's Mask are required. Speaking of the bosses, the boss remains are no longer required to activate boss portals, it only requires to have fought the boss for it to activate. I actually didn't know that this was only in Majora's Mask 3D, but my god, it saved me from big trouble. So I was in the Great Bay Temple, ready to face Georg, but the time was also running out. But I remembered that Georg was super easy in the original Majora's Mask, and since the fights with Odolva and Goth weren't changed that much, I thought that I will finish it in no time.
But boy was I proved wrong.
The fight was made way more challenging than the original one.
At least to me it was.
So of course I ended up spending more time on it than I thought. And what do you know? The final hours started kicking in and I was nowhere near completing the boss. It would have been fine in itself, but there was just a small detail of me having all the stray fairies with me. So I was completely fine with having to complete the dungeon again, but collecting the fairies?
Hell nah!
Just finding them is a pain in the ass. Can we just agree on that? So I'm standing there, barbecue sauce on my armpits, cause I'm sweating so much from the stress this oversized fishbone is giving me, and having all these stupid fairies in my arms, and I'm just almost screaming to just like, die you stupid sushi! As the impending doom of the crashing moon is slowly coming closer and closer. And then I come to the decision of just yeeting myself out of the place to return the fairies to the fountain and get whatever trash the reformed drag queen wants to give me, and go to another timeline to try this again. So, after all that, I enter the temple again, and the teleport activates, which was a nice surprise, since even though I didn't mind doing the temple again,
I really don't like the Great Bay Temple.
It's just like every other water temple in the Zelda series.
It can just flush itself down the toilet for what I care.
Anyway, back to the video. And speaking of the stray fairies, some of their locations have been changed. The outside of the Great Fairy fountains have also been decorated, making them more obvious. Anyone else think that those look like the Zonai symbols? Or just me? The platform to Woodfall Temple has been extended, as previously there was a possibility of falling into the poison water. The entrance to the Snowhead Temple has a gate fancy thingy, so you don't cheat yourself off like everyone else who played the original Majora's Mask. The Great Bay Temple has been changed to be navigated more easily, as the tube's colors are more visible and clear. Beneath the well, Gibdo requests have been changed to 1 magic bean instead of 5, 1 Dekunut instead of 10, 1 bomb instead of 10, and a blue or red potion instead of just blue potion. And the clues have been changed to match them. The Stone Tower Temple no longer has the Triforce symbols when inverted, and the same goes for the pillars in Termina Field. And the red emblem that is used to invert the temple is no longer behind the block in front of the platform, but over the entrance. Also, the blocks that you use to get into the temple are once again in a V shape, instead of being in a line, like they were in the very first version of the game.
It truly has made a full circle. Or in this case, a line. Or maybe not.
The secret shrine has been redesigned with cave drawings on top of the hallways, indicating which mini-boss is in which room. And the rooms also have cave drawings and different colored hues representing their locations. Greenish yellow for Woodfall, light blue for Snowhead, blue for Great Bay, and purple for Ikana. The unused Moon Dungeon cutscenes are now back, and a new one was made for Lynx. The Zora Dungeon has been changed with the addition of crystal switches. Other location changes include South Clocktown being massively changed, with a larger plaza, and the bank from West Clocktown and the owl statue from the left side of the clock tower have been moved behind the clock tower near the entrance to North Clocktown. The clock tower is accessible on both sides of the tower. New posters and graffiti have been added to various places around Clocktown, advertising things around Termina. The balloon in North Clocktown and Bomber's hideout has also been redesigned. Poison water has a different color now. The bean cellar grotto has been changed to lead to the soil where the magic bean needs to be planted. Swimming in the southern swamp is possible as Zora Link if putting the mask on when swimming as Link. The flame gates at the Deku Shrine have been swapped into iron bars so they don't hurt you and slow you down. Romani Ranch Arch now properly reads Romani Ranch instead of Kakariko Village. Zora Cape's name is now addressed properly as well.
That used to confuse me as a kid a lot. I thought there was like an item called Zora Cape or something.
The Pirate's Fortress has more hookshot targets for easier access. The jail cell that contains a piece of heart has had its doors opening time limit increased. The beehive has to be shot before entering the throne room as it is locked, and a shortcut to it from the beehive shooting room has returned. The Zora Egg aquariums no longer have shell plates in them. After the seahorse has shown you the path to Pinnacle Rock, it will mark the exact path on your touchscreen. The Beaver swimming minigame has been changed to having magic jars, since magic is now necessary to complete it. And other minigame prizes have been changed as well. And finally, the secret grotto exits have been redesigned. And now to some miscellaneous changes. Some cutscenes are now shorter or are skippable after watching once. Clocktown Deco. Such as the Song of Soaring teleport cutscene. Some text changes have been made, for example color coding. Pressing B makes Link climb faster, camera follows Link after going through a loading zone, small waterfalls don't have graphics for when standing under them, new Easter eggs have been added, such as the Gamecube in the bomb shop, and many other things. The owl statues look different than before as their eyes glow when activated, and they have a book at their feet. They also no longer require the sword to be activated. Simply talking to them will do it. The whole saving system has been renewed, and the owl statues work like any other saving spot. And the old quick save thing has been thrown out the window. As it should. So it also means that the game doesn't save anymore after using the Song of Time. When traveling back in time, the items are shown on touchscreen as they disappear. The credits have been changed to add a sequence for the 3DS staff, and it features an orchestral-styled medley. The title screen has also been graphically enhanced. The bottom screen has a mural with the Majora's Mask in it. The file selection has 3 save files and features the same mural as the title screen, and the files have a grey stonish look. While hovering over a started file, the current quest status shows up on the top screen with a purple background. The number of save file, name, transformation masks, hearts, when last saved, boss remains, sword, shield, heart pieces, quiver, bomb bag, songs, and the save location. The files on the touchscreen display the name, hearts, last save date, transformation masks, and boss remains. Interestingly, Twin Mole's remains has green eyes on the touchscreen like in the original Majora's Mask, even though it was changed from the blue one to the red one in this remake. And now for some new glitches and or bugs. The worker in South Clock Town carrying a beam doesn't actually move when off screen. The moon is not visible in the laundry pool on the first, second and the day of the final day, and it is rendered incomplete during the last night. But when going to the bottom of the pool as Zora Link and activating first person mode, the moon is visible. It is also possible for the first person mode to close by itself. If Anju's letter is not deposited in the mailbox before the postman collects the mail on the second day, but then depositing it later, the postman still collects it during the final day and tries to deliver it, but then abruptly disappears at 3 PM right before he can ring the bell. And obviously I tried this, so let's see how it went. The blue bubble curse effect temporarily disappears if Link talks to an NPC or goes to another area. When on Epona in Termina Field during the day transition, Epona starts running without any input. After using the L target, or talking to someone and then using the Circuit Pad Pro or the C-Stick, the first few frames twitch for a bit. There actually was an update for the game shortly after the game came out. The update fixed some text errors. For example, when talking to one Gorman brother without enough rupees to raise, and then talking to the other brother, an error message would appear. The update replaced it with not being able to talk to him. Other changes were the glitch where Link becomes swordless by replacing it with the ocarina at the Honey and Darling shop.
I swear to God, that shop is freaking cursed. Like, what the hell? Seems like half of the glitches come from that place. Do they have like no health and safety regulations?
And lastly, the update fixed a bug where depositing 0 rupees to the bank would cause the game to softlock. And now we finally get to the new additions!
Which there aren't that many though, but that seems to be the thing with Zelda remakes.
Like Ocarina of Time 3D, it has the Sheikah Stone, and it is inside the clock tower. It mostly features hints about dungeons and other progressive events. But a new addition to the Sheikah Stone is the locations of the heart pieces and stray fairies. But only after you have obtained them, making it easier to keep track where you still haven't obtained heart pieces or stray fairies. Unlike in Ocarina of Time 3D, it wobbles and flashes green when it has new hints, and it shows medals when all hints from each area are completed. New save statues have also been added, called the Feather Statues. They are placed all over the world and are only for saving, so it is not possible to teleport to them. And now, the long-awaited fishing holes. 2 fishing holes have been added to the game. One in the southern swamp near the swamp shooting gallery, and one in Zora Cape near the Great Fairy Fountain. It costs 50 rupees to fish, or a fishing hole pass, which I mentioned earlier in the video. The fishing hole passes are obtained from minigames and side quests that you have already completed. It mostly replaced the 50 rupee price that you used to get from completing these side quests again.
But then again, their fishing holes cost 50 rupees, so I guess it makes sense.
There are 24 fishes altogether in these ponds that you can catch, and some of them reference other games like the Terminal Lodge and Lord Chapu Chapu. It is possible to choose between normal fishing rod or a sinking lure. And all these fishes are obtained during certain times of day, or by wearing a certain mask, or playing a certain song. And then a jingle is played if the correct circumstances are met. And funnily enough, the Fierce Duty mask is usable there.
But there isn't really any prize for catching all the fish. They are just there.
Oh my god, it feels so surreal that this is finally done. Once again, so sorry for being Mia for so long. A lot of stuff has happened. I actually started working on this right after my previous video, but shortly after that I actually went to Rome for a week. Then I started a new job, so I wanted to get accustomed to all that. And then Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl were released. And then I caught a pretty bad cold and was sick for a while. And then Christmas came with all its holiday festivities. And then in January, Legends Arceus came out. And then I got COVID right after that. And I was once again sick for a long time. But here I finally am. And I have no clue what YouTube algorithm is gonna do with this long ass video, but we'll see. Also, you might see some new things around here on the channel, cause I'm in the middle of revamping everything. And even the things you see now could be gone soon. So stay tuned for that. Anyway, if you have made it this far, you must have really enjoyed this almost 1 hour long video. So make sure to leave a like and subscribe, cause it really helps me out. Thank you so very much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a lots of love. Bye bye!